It's mid-August and I'm working on rough sketching and continuing to develop raised garden beds in the woods. I've got a ton of them out here. Most of them are hugel mounds, which I talk about in other videos. I'll link through this video to past discussions of this whole area. What I wanted to focus on for a moment though is how I'm using comfrey to help suppress weeds and build fertility and not having to move it very far. So this comfrey was planted here along the edge of this walkway garden bed area about maybe 5 years ago, and it's a really good example of how much comfrey loves the sun. You can see in the shadier parts here it's growing, but it's not nearly as vigorous as the more open comfrey on this end. And what I've been doing, I'll link here to the last video where I talked about comfrey, in which I described stepping on the stems to bend them over to help extend the flowering, do really thorough weed suppression, and prompt more generation of material. And so now what I'm doing is going through and trimming off all of this old stem material to really promote the new growth, and taking all of this and putting it into the raised garden bed and stepping on it. And so what this is doing is making a real fertilizing sheet mulch in this bed. It'll rot down by the late fall and I can plant into this. I'm not worried about the comfrey rooting in here. The stems, once cut, do not root. It's really about the soil disturbance that'll do it. So if I were to dig in here, it would spread. If I were to dig and throw that soil, it would spread. But the cuttings won't. And so what I'm going to do is just keep going through with my pruners, cutting off all these stems that have been laying down, and that'll help the comfrey focus on another big flush of growth and flowers. And the bonus here is it'll give a release to this Nanking cherry, which is doing fine, but could use a little bit more light. Right now it's a little bit buried in the comfrey. So trimming all this back will help release that and really focus the fertility up into the beds. And so I'll take another shot once that's done. So there you go. It's a little rough looking right now, but all of this will start melting down into beautiful soil quickly and really suppress the plant growth that's in the bed. So this is a way of basically mining for minerals and water, nitrogen and nutrients, and having it be incredibly local to the source or to the points where you want to deliver it. This is all done with hand tools, with pruners, and you can see the Nanking cherry has a release in the canopy now. And I've chopped some of the comfrey and just laid it down over here just to protect the grasses from creeping in. And the next phase would be to come through with a hay fork and agitate this now bare soil and seed it out to a fall cover crop like daikon or turnip, just to kind of capture the value of this bare and relatively weed-free space. And then the comfrey will continue to grow and lope over, and I can either cut it and send it back into the garden or let it crush the daikons, either way. And so by planting this comfrey as a rhizome barrier a number of years ago and getting it established, I can now harvest basically the equivalent of a green manure, or it is a green manure, but it's somewhere as a hybrid between manure and mulch hay in its function by harvesting it and sending it directly into the beds. I'll take one last shot that shows a bed where I did this about a week ago, just so you can see what it'll look like. So this comfrey was basically cut to the ground about 2 weeks ago, and all of the cut material was laid into this bed, and you can see it turning into basically a dry hay for now. And yeah, there are weeds that are coming up around, but the next harvest of comfrey I'll pack on top of those weeds and keep adding grass clippings and comfrey until basically no weeds show up. By spring I should be able to seed this out to annual crops and then transplant in perennials by next fall. So comfrey acting as a rhizome barrier, as a nectar and pollen source for pollinators, nutrient accumulator, mulch, and soil builder. Really great plant.